KUAM TVH, first on Guam.
KUAM News, winner of the 2022 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Culture Club.
KUAM News Hotspot is brought to you by
Pacific Points, Do More, Get More, and Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
The menu, brought to you by King's Restaurant, always open, always local, and Ruby Tuesday Guam, home of the Fresh Garden Bar.
We are working with our federal partners to...
2023 marks the official end of the public health emergency as the governor declared it was all over on January 6th. What can we look forward to then in this post-pandemic economy? We talked with Dr. Maria Claret Ruane, a macroeconomics expert from the University of Guam, who's released her personal annual report on the state of Guam's economy. Some of the highlights: Guam's unemployment rate, which peaked at 19.4% in December of 2020, dropped to just 4.8% in June 2022. But, and this is a big but, the number of employable individuals who don't participate in the labor force remains at a very high 54,200. Private sector employment was still 7.5% below pre-pandemic levels. Only 3 industries, agriculture, construction, and manufacturing, have returned to or exceeded their pre-COVID baselines. Inflation was kept manageable at 1.7% and 3.8% in 2020 and 2021 respectively, but increased drastically, as it did across the nation, to 6.2% during the first 9 months of 2022. In our top private sector industry, tourism, Guam saw almost 217,000 visitors, beating forecasts of 130,000. But Dr. Ruane still points out that we are years away from returning to our pre-pandemic record of 1.63 million visitors in 2019. Overall, Guam's growth rate of 1.1% in 21 is a big improvement over the 11.4% drop in 2020, but Guam's economy remains 10% below what it was before the COVID crisis emerged. All right, Hafide everyone, and we are joined by the author of the 2022 Guam Economic Report, Dr. Maria Claret Ruane of the University of Guam. Hafide, Claret.
Hafide, Nestor, thank you for having me here. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to the KUAM team, to our island of Guam. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year. Hopefully we have some good news from you.
Well, we'll get into that. But Nestor, I wanted to clarify, though, that just like last year, the report was written as a private citizen. Part of it is a logistic issue. I usually write these reports very close to New Year's Eve. And there's no time for my administrators at UOG to read and approve. And I don't like to delay these reports, so I do want them out pretty much on New Year's Eve. So just to clarify, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so just wanted to start off with just getting your overall key points of this report.
It's a 2022 economic report, but it does give a bit of history. It certainly goes back to 2021, some references to that. And obviously it goes back to the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So it's a multi-year report to some extent. I wanted to start with the following, that the overall, I did not give any numerical estimation for 2022 and a forecast for this year we just started. But I just wanted to say the main theme is that our economy is recovering, has been recovering since 2021. So that's good to note. But it's not fully recovered. Okay, so of course we're about 1 year behind in terms of and I'm referring mostly to the macro, to the large picture data. The latest we have is still for 2021. So we don't have a read on 2022 until late this year. But I'm hoping to see, as everybody else is hoping to see, a positive growth and hopefully a relatively stronger one. But I can't put a number, let's put it that way. So the theme is we have recovered starting from 2021, but not fully recovered yet. You see it, and obviously the tourism sector is still well below. You see it in the employment, the sources of employment by industry. There is one graph that I invite our viewers to read from the report where the employment, there's only three industries where employment has actually recovered or passed the pre-pandemic level. Everything else is still below. Tourism is actually about 29% still below in terms of employment.
All right. I wanted to dig deeper into each of those main sections, and let's start with the growth rate. You said you can't really peg it at this point, but you did in your report say in 21, Guam's economy resumed a positive growth rate of 1.1% after decreasing by 11.4 in 2020. Of course, that was due primarily to the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about the growth rate?
Yes, that ended up being the growth rate of 1.1%. So we did grow. I was hoping for more. When we spoke a year ago, my estimation, as well as I could put it together, I was very surprised. My number was really off, was really high at 26%. So even during our conversation, I questioned whether could this be happening? Is this possible? I've seen it. I've seen a turnaround like that in the U.S. During the pandemic, so that they talked about a V-shaped recovery where there's a big decline and then there's a big recovery. I didn't see that happening with us. The recovery for us was just officially right now at 1 point for 2019. Need to clarify again, was only 1.1%. Just as a reminder, though, that even this official estimate can be revised and updated. It could be in the next 3 or 4 years. So just judging from earlier years, the 2018 report has been revised about 4 times. It was released in 2019, and then every year since then, it's been revised. So at some point, the revisions or the changes are getting smaller and smaller. So the 1.1% is officially our measure for 2019. As I said, I wish it was higher, but it is something to think about. And I do have some explanation for why I would have expected it to be higher, and it turned out not to be at this point.
All right. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more of our conversation with Dr. Claret and her Guam Economic Report for 2022.
All right.
How deep do Pizza Hut's roots run in the islands? Through all the decades, we know what you love. Great taste at an even better price. Like our large 3-topping carry-out pizza for just $13.99. You choose your favorite toppings, meat, vegetables, or any combination that totals 3. Our $13.99 large 3-topping pizza. Order online and carry one out today. Only at Pizza Hut, the island's best.
Okay, and we're back with Dr. Maria Claret Ruane from the University of Guam. And Dr. Claret, I wanted to kind of focus now on prices and inflation, that section of your report.
All right. Well, I mean, forecasting from last year, we're expecting inflation to be higher this year. I'm sorry to have so much joy in confirming that my forecast actually came true. Although if it's not good numbers, I'd rather not see it. Believe me, I'd rather be wrong. But the last time we spoke a year ago, I was forecasting inflation to run about 6% or higher for the year that just ended, 2022. As far as the information I have, I only have up to the third quarter of last year, and we are running at an average of 6.2%. Again, this is not new information for a lot of us. We've seen the numbers, which I love to see, although not this high inflation number. We experience it obviously as we hit the store, we gas up our cars. So it's not just numbers for numbers' sake. It is our life, and things have become really expensive. So what's the expectation for next year? Well, I mean, a lot of it is driven by fuel cost. So at least the good news is that from the summer last year, fuel costs had been decreasing in the U.S. and also here on Guam. I think one of the charts I showed was about mid-June. The lowest grade, the lowest octane for gas price was $6.49 per gallon. So since then, of course, it helped that we had a waiver on the liquid fuel tax, which just got extended until April, I believe, this year. and also that we got some breaks with our power cost. So I hope inflation will go down this year. If that is the trend that it's headed to, keep in mind again, some of the waivers are temporary. So after April, what would happen? Also, keep in mind that a little bit of the break we got, inflation could have been worse if not for I think, $14 or $15 million from the ARPA money that the Office of the Governor gave GPA to delay the rate increase. So it's not always good news. There was a paragraph in my report that talked about the experience has been a combination of good news and bad news. We could always get it even worse than we did, but I'm sure, things could always be better. We always welcome it to be better. So I don't have a numerical forecast for inflation this year. Judging from also the effect of the US inflation, we import 50 to 60% from the US. Their inflation has also been decreasing since the summer. So at least CPI now, Consumer Price Index, inflation in the US is down to 7.1% in November. It was as high as 9% in June of last year. So there seems to be a downward trend that way. There's the other factor, which is the price that producers pay or businesses pay, wholesale prices. And that actually topped at 11.7% in March of last year. And as of November, it's down to 7.4. So there's some indication that there is downward movement in some of, the prices of where we bring our stuff from. So it's not a scientific, it's more really that I hope that our inflation would not be higher than this year's inflation, which is about 6.2% where it's at right now.
Yeah, so your feeling is that it should go down, but you're not quite sure how much, by how much, and how long it will take. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I know there are efforts by the Federal Reserve in the US to try to bring inflation down, and the effect is kicking in, if it is, very, very slowly. So this is not good news, but if the forecast for the US is a recession next year, I'm going to use quote, one benefit of a recession is it does slow spending and slow down prices. At the same time, what counters that if there's additional spending that's happening in the economy? So you're trying to slow down spending, but if you're introducing more spending, it kind of defeats the purpose.
It's always quite the balancing act. Wanted to move on to employment. You mentioned there's only 2 or 3 industries that saw any movement upward. Can you go into the details on that?
Yes, just summarizing this on table 2, I have that in front of me. So I did try to look at year-to-year changes in employment in the different industries, but also ultimately compared, the latest that we have is for June 2022. So ultimately, the last column there you'll see is I compared the June 2022 report with June 2019, trying to keep the months the same because, months and quarters behave a certain way, their seasonality. So I'm trying to do the comparison as accurately as possible. So the June 2019 is, to some extent, that would be a benchmark for pre-pandemic. And so with the 3 industries, one is not surprising to us, construction has actually been growing even during the pandemic, 22% in 2020, 11.5% in 2021, and then the year that just ended, 12.5%. So if you look at that, employment in construction in mid of last year compared to before the pandemic, 3 years ago, we're up 53% there. So again, not a surprise, construction happening, on the civilian side, but also on the military side would be captured there. The other industry is manufacturing. I don't have a breakdown of specifically what manufacturing lines of businesses are reported in there. That's something that probably I would think Gary House would be a better person to ask. But just judging from, again, what the great media reports, the entrepreneurial spirit, the small businesses recovering in our economy, I'd like to think, manufacturing of different kinds of food items and, different kinds of even some sustainable products that I read about might be explaining that number. Again, I wish I could be more sure, but I just have to guess based on, just to some extent triangulating available information. And then the third one that's increased employment is agriculture, about 3% in June 2022 compared to June 2019, again, considered to be pre-pandemic. So not having more details on that, I'm hoping all our efforts to try to encourage some of these productions, some of, some, for example, in agriculture and aquaculture as well. Hopefully some of these things are starting to materialize. It'll be great to get a more detailed analysis on these things. I look forward to seeing them, but those would be my speculations at this point.
In your report, you note that private sector employment was still down 7.5%.
That is correct. Private sector employment is still down compared in June 2022 compared to 3 years earlier. So the theme is for 2022, there's also the economy has recovered. 2022 has been better than 2021, but still below 2019. Let's put it that way. So the private sector has made a comeback, trying to locate where my number is from. So let's put it this way, from 45,860 in June 2021 to 47,200 in June 2022. So that's about a 3% growth. But compared to 2019, it was 51,000. So 47,000 versus 51,000. We're still below 7.5% there. That's one of the themes that we hear from our community, our business community, but obviously businesses employ our larger community, that the recovery in terms of employment has not been complete. I mean, there's still a lot of room to climb, to get back to the pre-pandemic level.
Yep, absolutely. All right, time for another break, and we'll be back with Dr. Maria Claret Ruane from the University of Guam right after this break.
Watch Sunday 9:30 Mass live from La Dolce Nombre de Maria Cathedral Basilica on the stations of KUAM Communications. Check local listings for scheduling, as channels may vary due to live broadcasts.
Okay, and we're back from the break, and I want to continue our discussion of the 2022 Guam Economic Report. We have two main economic drivers that you noted in your report. Those are tourism, of course, and military spending. Let's start with tourism. What did you find out about that?
I think everybody knows what's happening with tourism. I kept that section small. We have a lot of wonderful tourism experts on island. So, I'm sure they could give better information than I did. So I focused mostly on numbers, calculation. I think tourism is, again, the theme is the same. In 2022, there's been a recovery. So in fact, for fiscal year 2022, we welcome visitors that beat the earlier forecast. We actually welcomed more than 200,000, a bit 216,000 visitors to the island, about 54%, 55% from the Korean market. So there's some recovery, something to be happy about that's happening compared to 2021, where for the entire year, I think we only welcomed 61,000 visitors. But it's very tricky to go back to the it's a far cry from the 1.6 million that we welcomed in fiscal year 2019. I know the tourism experts are saying it'll still take, quite some time to fully recover.
Yeah. Do you have any insight on the spend? How much the tourists are spending now as compared to pre-pandemic?
Well, my sources are the same as yours. So actually, I do go to the exit survey posted by the Guam Visitors Bureau. And for obvious reasons, not having a lot of visitors in the past 2 or 3 years, that the latest survey that they have is still, I think, 2020, early in 2020. When I did the forecast, though, and this is very, very conservative estimation because I only tracked the on-island spend, so none of the prepaid spending. I did track that compared to last year, tourist spending, compared to 2021, tourist spending in 2022 is at least $250 million more. Now, there's a bit of So that's good news. That's what I do as a macroeconomist, is track this money that comes to our island and gets circulated, gets multiplied through. So that's up. Not surprising. Again, our number of visitors have increased. Now, in terms of the military market, and again, this is just based on the GVB numbers. The military market, because of the Korean market had picked up, the military market comparatively, proportionately, had become smaller. And whereas my estimate last year was that market contributed about $26 million of spending, this year I think it's down to 20 million. The numbers are also a bit lower, not this year, I mean last year, compared to the previous year. But there's some good stuff that I found from the president of GHRA that actually gave figures on the number of room and nights that the military brought. And I was able to, I thank her for the data. I produced it on table 5 over here. So that if you look at fiscal year to date, 2022, that is up to April 2022. The first 4 months of last year, that we're looking at about 190 room nights, $30 million in terms of room revenue, and 11% of that in hotel occupancy tax.
And speaking of military and military spending, that's the big money is coming in, and particularly in military construction.
That's a lot of, when I was writing the report, that amount was really, it's the biggest I've seen, because for this particular report, I actually had to build the table of the projects and how much it costs. So going to about 4,000 pages of the NDAA fiscal year 2023 and tracking as much as I can. And it came out to be $1.7 billion worth of military projects for Guam for fiscal year 2023. Now, I realize that every time you do these analyses, it's always a question that do we actually see, does all this amount actually show up on Guam and get spent here? And I know that's some of the concerns in our community of who ends up with the contracts, right? Are they on island or off island? Because so if you were to measure the impact of military spending, you do need to find out, if the money made it here in the first place. I'd like to think, and again, this is a bit tricky. I wish I had more information, that if we have off-island contractors, though, a lot of times they do set up a presence here. And then it becomes a question of how many were they able to employ in their local office, and how much do they buy from the local, the local suppliers. And as you know, in general, anyway, we import quite a bit here, 60%. From other sources. So it gets, but the number, speaking of that, the number is really quite an increase to, again, $1.7 billion fiscal year 2023 compared to less than 800 million. So it's an extra $1 billion on military spending here.
Yeah, but as you kind of allude to, of the 1.7 billion, how much of that stays here and trickles down into the local economy? Yeah.
Yes, and so that's always a good one to measure. I try my best to estimate it. I don't have all the information to come up with a figure. I welcome other people that have more information on getting this done, because that really ends up being the question of what is the true contribution of the military to the local economy. Because, and it's not only the money that gets spent here, obviously the jobs that are created in the process, and also the taxes that are paid from the military projects. So, it's not a question of whether it's good news or bad news. I think it's a question of quantifying it and putting it in the right context.
Sure, and there are indications that in addition to the main project that's been going on for the last several years, the Marine Corps Base Camp Blaz, there are also going to be additional spending, huge amounts, for a missile defense system for Guam.
That is correct. And that's included in the 1.7 billion. I listed that as one of the, so I didn't limit it to just military construction projects. That's included in there. And there's a wonderful document that I worked with, which is obviously published by DOD, and it's the Pacific Deterrence Initiative. And it did break down, the goals of the program. It specified the Military Defense Agency and tracking how much spending is going to happen. The the report shared budget for the next until fiscal year 2027. So again, some of them are broken down to specifying what Guam is expected to get or what's budgeted for Guam, but some of them are kind of just general categories. So it's always very difficult to pin down what amount we're looking at exactly, not to mention the earlier discussion that we have that do we actually get them on island and, generate an impact on our economy here.
Yeah,
but that's one of the main part of the defense spending. And I know that our community split on that issue because every time you talk about missile, I mean, it's serious matter. It's obviously serious matter. So I feel myself out of lane on that discussion. So I apologize that I tend to just focus. Obviously, I'm an economist, right? So I like to focus on the economic aspect, the funds that come in and circulate, and the jobs that are created from the process. We are happy. We are lucky in our community that we have experts who could, give us more information, more details than I'll ever be able to give you. So
yeah. Yeah, when it comes to that missile defense system, the argument is that it's good that we have one. It's bad that we have to have one, because that means we're a target. Yeah.
Yes, but keep in mind, it's the same that what people say, and not to bash the insurance industry, but this is the same thing that people say about insurance. It's something that you want to make sure that you have, but you don't really want to use, right? So it's the same philosophy.
Absolutely. Okay, one more break, and then we're going to wrap it all up with Dr. Maria Claret Ruane from the University of Guam. Please stay with us.
Get up-to-the-minute news, plus access to alerts, streaming radio, promotions, and more on your mobile device by downloading the KUAM News mobile app, available at the App Store now.
All right, everyone, and we're back for our final segment with Dr. Maria Claret Ruane. Dr. Claret, what would then be your overall economic forecast for 2023?
Very tough question, Nestor, that you asked me. Let's put it this way. This report's a bit difficult to write because I'm not sure if I could forecast 2023 exactly, unless I just say something a little bit more general. As I've mentioned before, our economy's been recovering since 2021. So if that is the case, then I would think that we recovered some more in 2022. We'll recover some more in 2023. So if you're willing to accept that term of just some more, because I'm not able to put numbers, will it recover a lot or 1.1% or something like that? It's hard for me to say. However, I have to say that when I looked at the 2021 experience, I'm actually, as I mentioned, I'm disappointed. I was expecting more growth from our economy, which makes me wonder if, when I first, about 10 years ago, that was my forecast for Guam, is I use the term stable, and I usually use it in quotes because it's actually euphemism for the fact that we're growing every year, which is great, about 1% growth, but it could be better. Every time it could be better. So it's stable, it doesn't change much. And until I see the 2022 estimate, I can't shake off the feeling that we might be going back to that. And you understand, I don't want to. If it's my choice, I don't want to, because we've seen that before, where every year it's the same. Tourism's picked up, but the military or the federal funds went down. So it's always one compensating for the other. 2019 was great in the right context because our economy grew at 2.6%. How did that happen? Strong tourism, 1.6 million visitors. Large amount of federal funds, not just military, but overall federal funds. And then our economy, our local businesses, our consumers were pretty strong. Then the job numbers were pretty decent. That if we could replicate that, then we could at least make it to about that, what that is, 2.6%. Yeah. So looking at the larger economy though, I'm always looking for the big push to shake us off of that stable 1% growth rate. And I don't know exactly what that big push is going to be. So I invite our local community. What would that big push be to get us out of this stable, almost just 1%, almost zero growth every year, to something more than that?
We need
And
that third. Yeah, we need that third stool of the economy that we've always been talking about for years, and it has yet to materialize. But hopefully, the leaders are working on that.
Well, let's put it this way. I welcome more legs to the stool, which is the economy we're talking about. New industries, welcoming them certainly would be great. And so, all of these will be forecasted as they come along, and looking for a more positive growth than we've experienced so far.
All right. Dr. Maria Claret Ruane of the University of Guam, Professor of Economics, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your Guam Economic Report for 2022.
Thank you so much, Nestor. Thank you so much to the Guam community. Have a good day. Have a happy new year.
All right. I'm Nestor LeConte. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on The Hub.